You have now entered the Oval Office of Talk Radio for the Gulf Coast with Carl Gallups and Freedom Friday. Carl doesn't need a teleprompter. He actually knows the difference between right and wrong, and the difference between common sense and political correctness. He is on a first-name basis with God. What a refreshing place to be. Now, here's Carl Gallups.
All right, welcome to the real Freedom Friday. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today. Mallory Bardwell, your world-famous producer, and of course I am Carl Gallups, your host. Glad that you're with us. 850-623-1330, write that number down, or put it in your cell phone. 850-623-1330, and or just go ahead and dial it and get your redial button ready on your telephone in your office or your home, because we'd love for you to be a part of the show today, especially in this first segment. I'd love for you to call in. I'm going to be talking about a couple of things, including a very latest announcement in the cold case posse, Sheriff Arpaio Mike Zullo investigation of the Obama birth certificate fraud. There is some breaking and some monumental news in that, and I'll be bringing that in just a moment. But I call myself the real Freedom Friday because I know many of you, of course, are listening prior to this show to the great 1330 WEBY as well. Well, listen, man, there's so much to talk about here. Let me give you the very latest. I promised the folks on ppsimmons News Network today, and on Facebook and YouTube and our blog spot, etc., that I would do this. So, and many of you, of course, are not connected to that or couldn't be because you're at work or whatever. But here's the deal. A lot of you have been asking me by email, telephone calls, Facebook posts, YouTube posts, tweets, blog posts. Some of you that live in the local area that bump into me, you ask me over and over, what's going on with the birth certificate investigation? We haven't heard anything from you or Zullo in weeks and weeks. And why have you gone silent? Is it all over with? Did you hit a roadblock? Has your life been threatened? Because you said if your life was threatened, if you went silent, then we would know. Well, I forgot that I said that, so I'm really sorry for those of you that I terrified, but no, my life has not been threatened. But listen, I am not an official spokesperson for Mike Zullo and Sheriff Arpaio, okay? I'm not an official. I mean, Sheriff Arpaio doesn't call me up and say, Carl, say this. Mike Zullo doesn't call me up and say, Carl, say this for me. I am not that guy, okay? I am in contact with them a lot, Mike Zullo, almost every day. So, and you know that. And I have Zullo on the program, and you know that Mike and I talk a lot about all of this and what he has and what he knows and what's going on. But I am not an official spokesperson for them. So I want to make that clear. Now, I can tell you this. Here is what I can tell you at this point. Now you got to listen closely because this is huge. I'm going to be general, but yet pretty pointed, and you'll understand why after I tell you. I can tell you this. This investigation has not gone silent. It has never stopped. Mike Zullo and I have been telling you, if you'll remember, for months that this investigation a couple of months ago took a deeper turn. You remember that? I told you it took another turn. Well, not only did it take a deeper turn, but now it has gotten deeper, darker than you could ever imagine. Let me just tell you, Mike has been traveling around the country the last couple of weeks as a result of this new branch of investigation. I mean, it's all connected and interconnected, but it goes way deeper, way more than the birth certificate. I don't even know how to say it. I have to be very careful with this because the implications of what has been uncovered, and this is with hard documentation and evidence, hard documentation is now in their hands. It is absolutely astounding. It's beyond monumental. It could be historical. It could be history changing. Now, I know that all sounds dramatic and maybe, hyperbole. I promise you it's not. I wish I could tell you what has been discovered. And it's not just one thing. It's a handful of unbelievably monumental things. And remember, and they now have the hard document evidence and more evidence that I'm not allowed to say what in their hands on this stuff. So as a result, the cold case posse investigation, the Zullo investigation, has increased 100-fold in intensity. So not only is it not gone away and not gone underground, but it's increased. This is why Mike Zullo has made no recent comments. The necessity for absolute 100% confidentiality is just too important. I wouldn't expect a detailed comment from Zullo or Arpaio for a while, I would think. It's just simply too big to let out or to even hint about what the details are. It's just too big. Now, I can also tell you this. Based upon what I know, the birth certificate issue, it has been 100% settled. Oh, I know it hasn't been adjudicated yet, but listen, I cannot tell you how we know what we know, all right? But without any argument, without any shade of doubt, the birth certificate posted on the White House website is a 100% fabrication. All this junk talk about the Xerox machine and reproducing certain anomalies found on the White House birth certificate, it's been completely, forensically, and in 100% evidentiary fashion, it's been debunked. All of the OBOT minutia has been completely eviscerated. It's been obliterated. I promise you. All of those of you who've had concerns about this matter of the birth certificate, you've been vindicated. You were right all along, and all of this is going to come to light. Just be patient. But again, this entire affair is now much, much bigger than the birth certificate. I mean, it moves into the area of being very dangerous for people. Now, all the proper, precautions are being taken, and all the evidence and all the information and all that they have, the hard copies, I mean, they're being backed up and re-backed up and filed and locked away in various locations and various people that don't even know they're connected. So I mean, if Arpaio, Zullo, and I disappear tomorrow, all of this will come forth probably the next day. So all of that's been handled. But I'm telling you, as soon as I'm at liberty to say more, I will. But until then, America, and I know there are millions of you out there, you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to pray, and you're going to have to trust. Sheriff Arpaio, Mike Zullo, they've never lied to you or misled you in the past on this issue. I promise you. And they'll not do it in the future. They're working tirelessly, even as I'm speaking to you now. You will see the results one day in the future, and then you'll know. Now, I'm telling you, this is the first time Mike Zullo has not told me every little detail of what he knows because it's so huge, so monumentally huge. Well, if you want to call in and comment on that, you can, 850-623-1330. We're going to take this quick time out, then we'll come back. This is stuff you're not going to hear anywhere else, but you will hear it on Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups.
Now, back to your turn on 1330 WEBY, Northwest Florida's talk radio. The phone lines are open, so call in and join the conversation at 623-1330.
How can one man bother so many people by simply telling the truth? Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio.
All right, welcome back. Well, if you just heard that last segment, and by the way, if you want to call and comment on it, agree, disagree, if you have more questions, if you'd like to ask me something, please feel free, 850-623-1330. If you were just listening to that last segment, I'm sure some of you, your hair is kind of standing straight back, and others of you might be tempted to say, well, we've heard all this before. I mean, something big is happening, and it never does. Well, people, please hear me. It is a little discouraging to me as well when we're right at the brink of a big, breakthrough and the possibility of shoving this thing forward when all of a sudden there's something else that just explodes in front of our face. And see, here's the deal. And I've got to be careful what I say, but let me just remind you. This goes back 5 years. I mean, Hillary Clinton, folks, was the first birther. That's all in the mainstream media now. And people are reporting that she's the one that first outed Obama back during the campaign, saying she had stuff on Obama that could sink his campaign. There were hints, and now we even know from people that are close to the Clintons that they were talking about, that they knew he wasn't qualified, that he didn't have an American birth certificate, et cetera, et cetera. That goes all the way back to the Clintons and the Democrats. It's not a birther thing. It's not a conservative thing. It's not a Tea Party thing. It's not a Carl Gallups thing. This has been going on a long time. So if it was just simply a matter of some dude that birth certificate was messed up, or his daddy wasn't a citizen, so he wasn't a natural-born is the word I'm looking for. Good gracious, you wouldn't think I could forget that word. A natural-born citizen. That would have been so easy to deal with years ago. I mean, again, let me remind you, the John McCain hearings, they checked into him, and Senate did, and 2 or 3, 4 days, they issued a statement, the Resolution 511. Okay, so if it was that simple with Obama, this could have been handled a long time ago. But you got to remember that Arpaio and Zullo didn't get involved till just a couple of years ago. And when they did, and when law enforcement techniques were used, not only did they discover that the birth certificate was a fraud, but then, and I've got to be careful here, but then they discovered so many other tentacles to this thing that were the reasons why there had to be a fraudulent birth certificate. Does that help you understand? In other words, it's not just some guy that was pulling a little hoodoo on the people, but it's so much deeper than that. There's a reason that the hoodoo had to be pulled. And that kind of stuff started coming forth in their investigation. Well, now it's gone deeper than that. Because as the more they went, the more they found. And then, of course, the OBOTs and the operatives started throwing up smoke screens and threatening media and threatening, court systems and threatening. I mean, we've got Zullo and them have affidavit from media people, big media people, who said that they were threatened. So it got deeper and darker and deeper and darker. Well, now they knew that they didn't just have a simple matter of somebody forging a birth certificate. You see why this takes so long. This is serious stuff. If they had just gone forward and said, okay, here's a birth certificate, it was forged, all right, they would come up with plausible deniability. They'd come up with, oh, it was a mistake, we didn't know, here's the real thing, and then it would all been over with. But in the meantime, it gets deeper and deeper and darker and darker. And now we're discovering that the birth certificate kind of almost is a smokescreen to the bigger thing. But now what I'm trying to tell you is that Zullo and Arpaio et al., they've got stuff in their hands now, documented, hardcore, hard evidence stuff, plus a whole lot more that I can't tell you, I wish I could, that takes this to a whole nother level. So just hang on, folks. This is not over. In fact, it's just beginning. This guy's got 3 more years in office, but I predict that long before that 3 years, something huge is going to come forth. Something monumental, because I know what they've got, and it's potentially history-changing. And it all goes back to the piece of paper called a birth certificate. Now do you see why there was so much viciousness, vitriol aimed at us early on? And you got to remember, it was Hillary Clinton that started it, not Carl Gallups. Why there was so much vitriol aimed at us. Immediately we were dubbed conspiracy theorists, tinfoil hat, and that was just over the birth certificate. Okay? But I'm here to tell you, if you think his birth certificate was fraudulent or there was some monkey business going on with that, you have been vindicated. That's all I can tell you right now. 1,000% sure. I promise you, 1,000% sure. Birth certificate's a fraud, and this man's a fraud. But it's so much deeper than that. And Arpaio and Zullo and a whole bunch of other folks who are involved in this investigation hold the evidence in their hands. And I know some of you say, well, when are they going to do something with it? Just let them do their thing. They know what they're doing. This is complex. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of effort and strings being pulled. But all that's happening while I'm speaking right now, as I'm speaking, it's happening. So just hang on. Pray, 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 pray. And just know that this is deep, it is complex, it is dark, and it's going to take a little while. Okay? All right. Well, that's about all I can say without getting into details of what actually they have uncovered, and I will not do that. And I just won't. And besides, there's a whole lot about it that they purposely are keeping from me just for my protection, their protection, and the integrity of this whole case. So even if somebody put a gun to my head today, I could tell them a few things that would be of interest to them, but they wouldn't even know where to begin to unravel the whole mess before it comes forward publicly. So that's all of these steps are being taken. So anyhow, that's the deal. Let me just remind you now, in just a few moments, Mike Shoesmith's coming up. Then after that, Dr. Grace is with us today, and then the last half.